One of my main goals has always been to share information and to make it easy for everybody just starting out with a low glycemic plant-based diet. You can download my guide and browse my blog as well as YouTube channel for blood sugar balancing recipes. What's more, since I struggled with yeast infection myself, I've also provided a free guide to Candida overgrowth that is available for downloading on my blog. And if you need more specific help and meal plans, I have put together meal plans for both the cleanse and reintroduction phase. And that's not it. Every Friday, I send out a weekly Nutri-blogs to my subscribers, including exciting nutrition-related news that I picked up from recent studies or from my holistic nutritionist course, books and podcast episodes that I'm currently obsessed about, anything I need to mention about my blog, recipe suggestions and/or a cooking tip according to the season, interesting product discoveries, and something personal as well. Now I would like to give you some easy tips on how to stay on a low glycemic diet. Eat food that is grown and not produced. In other words, stick to whole plant foods. Whole grains and legumes, fresh fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. Avoid processed whole plant foods, as any processing increases the glycemic load. For example, prefer intact grains instead of flours and fresh fruit over dried varieties. To make it really easily graspable, while steel gut oats have a GI of 55, then instant oatmeal reaches 79. But when we move on to breakfast cereal, we can get into the 80s and 90s even. The reason is that the industrial processing methods such as extrusion cooking and explosion buffing accelerate starch digestion and absorption, causing blood sugar spikes. Eat whole fruits instead of blending them together in a smoothie. Blending does not only make the carbohydrates absorb faster, but people tend to consume larger quantities when the food is liquid. If you love blended foods, have legumes. For example, blended lentils have the same low GI as whole lentils. Same goes for beans. They all have the same low glycemic response. It's because legumes have thicker, fibrous cell walls that protect the inner starch from disruption. So hummus is the way to go. However, remember that intact is still more beneficial. If you eat whole intact foods, there's more food for your gut bacteria because no matter how well you chew, the small bits and pieces left behind transport an array of starches and other prebiotic nutrients straight down to our good bacteria to feed on. Eat most of your calories during the first half of the day. If you consume most of the energy during an evening meal, it's going to negatively impact your cholesterol and blood sugar control. Here's a list of the foods with the highest glycemic load and recommendations for replacing them. Avoid white flour, white bread, store-bought jams. Instead, have whole grain flour or better whole intact grains. Whole grain bread with added intact grain berries or homemade fermented bread made without flour. Applesauce, homemade berry and fruit purees or chia jams. Avoid refined grains like cereal flakes, white rice, white semolina. Instead, have whole grain flakes, whole grain rice, whole grain semolina. Avoid white sugar. Watch out for added sugars on labels as well. Instead, have sweet fruits, sweet tubers, mesquite, carob, monk fruit, yacon powder, and in small quantities stevia, xylitol, coconut, palm sugar, and erythritol. Avoid store-bought ketchup. Instead, have tomatoes and homemade tomato sauce.